So, hey guys, today we're talking about power creep once again. And today we're going to talk about how Ryzeal and Maliss have power crept the game in a really odd way. So, I only just realized this recently, but pretty much every single starter you have for Ryzeal here, right? And also every starter we have for Maliss has this one kind of dumb quality, I guess you could say. So, every single Ryzeal card, every single well, not just Ryzeal card, I guess. It's like Ryzeal starter slash extender or Maliss starter slash extender. They go into essentially all of the cards in one turn, right? So if we start with X special summons itself, and then we are able to add a Fire Thunder monster from our deck to our hand. In this case, we'll probably go with, let's see, it says Fire, right? Fire Thunder, yep. So then we would go into Sword. Sword can special summon itself. And then this grabs a Light Pyro monster, which would be Ice. Ice can then special summon itself. And then this special summons a Ryzeal monster from your deck, except for Ice, which allows you to then special summon, like, I guess, Star or Node, whatever. And then we can go into Ryzeal Duo Drive, and then this adds 2 Ryzeal cards. So in this case, we can go add, if we want it, we can add technically Node, I guess, and then also add the Field Spell, or Plasma Hole plus Field Spell. So that means, like, essentially from any of these starters, from like Bonfire included and 7th Tachyon, you essentially go into all of your Ryzeal names, right? So now, here's the $100 question, I guess, the $1 million question, whatever. So, in this case, then, if you have a max C, what difference does this make? So, not just like a max C kind of thing. Well, the max C would be the explanation of why you have these cards. If you had every single Ryzeal engine piece, what does this actually change about your combo realistically? Because you were already going into all of these cards. So, well, what does this exactly change if you just open more of these in your hand? Well, then it would be somewhat kind of like hand trap resistance, I guess. So, if I were to like drop an imperm on the X Ryzeal, which searches the Sword Ryzeal, if you just special summon the Sword Ryzeal after I imperm on the X, then you still have combo, I guess, right? But if you were to like try a 1-card X, of course, and you did not have the sword, then yeah, your combo is done after a single imperm. But all of that probability stuff aside, because there's a relatively high chance of you having a Ryzeal starter of some kind. Now the question here is, what will this engine realistically do for you? Because if I have sword already, I was going to search sword with X either way, and then if I special summon the sword here to then add ice, if I have ice already in my hand, it's just I have a discard for ice now, I guess. That's about the only difference I'm seeing here. So doesn't seem to make too much of a difference. Maybe we can look for an extra search onto like Plasma Hole or Ryzeal plugin if we have an extra card. But essentially, you access pretty much every single card in your deck here that's like vaguely Ryzeal related. So if I were to open like Cross, Plasma Hole, and plugin, you could even argue that this would technically be a negative to open these cards because I was going to access them anyways. And this applies for Maliss as well. If we actually go through the Maliss line, if we start from just Dormouse, the only thing you don't access is, well, assuming we're playing one of each card, the only thing we're not accessing for the most part will be Heart Scripter, because we're making Apollosa. If we weren't making Apollosa, I think you could find access to Heart Scripter, but not really important. You don't access specifically just Jessie Cat, and then potentially TB11. Unless you have TB11 in your deck, then you would access specifically TB11. I think that gives access to Chessy Cat, and then you still have the ability to kind of go through all three traps technically in your combo line. So we would go like White Rabbit, set TB11, White Binder sets GWC06, and then next turn we'll special summon White Rabbit to set the MTP07. And we have access to Underground and then Malice in the Mirror from Red Ransom. So Red Ransom is going to add Malice in the Underground, and then Malice in the Underground can then banish Malice in the Mirror to then banish the Red Ransom to special summon it back or whatever. And then at that stage you can banish, I guess it would still be March Hare, I think, because I think we can access Chessy Cat with the TB11. But yeah, that means if we have like Gold Sark and all of that stuff, the way you access these monsters hasn't actually changed per se, right? So in this case, Sword will special summon itself from hand, right? So if you already have Sword, the only difference is now you could also normal summon a Sword. With Ryzeal specifically, it's a little bit better, but with Malice, if you just open like 5 Malice monsters, it doesn't really do anything for you. The only difference in this case is you can March Hare to banish the monster in hand, but if you're going to banish the monster in a different way, like for example with Malice in the Underground, with like a Dormouse, with March Hare by sending it to the graveyard, whatever. We also have technically, I guess, Red Ransom banishing it from the deck, banishing whatever card, right? You could have accessed that card that way as well. So did opening Chessy Cat actually change anything? I don't think it changes anything with the combo or what you're really able to do. So with your Malice monsters, after normal summon Dormouse, if the Dormouse is like, let's say, I don't know, banish face down, return to the deck, that would still harm you significantly. I guess because you just don't have a way to really extend with the cards in your hand. Like with a White Rabbit, can't really just special summon White Rabbit from hand. We have to banish it and then special summon. So we would have to like activate, for example, either Gold Sark or Malice and Underground or March Hare to special summon the White Rabbit after like Dormouse gets removed from the field. Or we could technically have, if we can put Dormouse on the field, we can banish from the deck with Dormouse. If we can manage to banish Red Ransom, we can have Red Ransom banish, right? So essentially, like, all of your one card combos here are essentially accessing your entire engine. But let's take another look at this again. So that sounds broken, of course, right? That, oh, you can access everything in your engine with your cards, right? But the cards kind of like, and the combo, they work differently now. So if we were to look at Dormouse and just remove the extra deck cards for a moment from the equation, what do these cards in the main deck actually do? Well, all of these traps that the White Rabbit can set, they do genuinely what might as well be nothing. And then Dormouse gives like a small attack boost, so you can get a 2.1k attack point Chessy Cat, right? So in short, you're doing a lot of nothing. So if you just cut off access to the extra deck, or you have like answers for some of the extra deck monsters for Malice, then going second, they're completely useless, I'd say. So we could, for example, let's say if we're playing Voiceless Voice, we can Sravis hit the SP Lil Knight, and then when access code gets special summoned, we can destroy access code with the Voiceless Trap. And that this play will remain the same and pretty much like not contestable by Malice. Like even if you open Malice in the Mirror, it doesn't really matter. However many pieces of engine you have in your hand, if you resolve Max E and you drew into engine, right? It's not going to change anything. If you drew into non-engine, that's going to matter more. So cards like maybe Forbidden Droplet, Dark Ruler No More, Infinite Impermanence, but not so much against Voiceless Voice, I guess, because drawing Imperm late is really useless. But yeah. the cards that are really carrying the going second part of these newer decks, because I don't know why, but these going second cards, they just don't really exist anymore, or like any good going second potential on the cards, they just aren't really there. And this is just assuming you are resolving Maxi, of course, right? So whether you resolve Maxi or not, or whether you have multiple engine pieces or not, it just matters that you have at least one. That's kind of how I'm feeling with this new card design, right? And I don't think we were really seeing this before. I think Snake Eye was a little bit closer to this. And Yubel is like a bit different because you can use your extra cards to make like a Phantom of Yubel, I guess, if you were to draw a lot of cards, which is problematic, right? Because you can insulate your play somewhat and also potentially go into some board breakers first before committing to your main starters or whatever. But with these cards, it's just like, really wondering what's going on here, I guess. Because the engine pieces, they all go into the engine pieces. It's like, if you have more engine pieces, you can't really extend that much. Which is just kind of wild, I guess. So, if you have a way to just deal with the hand traps, these decks really aren't that problematic anymore, assuming you were going first. Now, in terms of going second, it's still kind of because even when you go through your full combo, right? So, just with examples of Ryzeal and Maliss, the amount of interruptions you have is less than the one card combo for like Yubel, and your plays, they're not like necessarily as, I guess, as insulated as maybe Yubel when they have access to like an early Phantom of Yubel or early Appaloosa. And when I say early, Yubel drops an Appaloosa really fast. Well, potentially, right? But much more so than these decks that are not able to do so. So, very, very intriguing to me, I guess, at least, how this is kind of a form of power creep. So, technically, Maxi, like, you could say in this case, like, Maxi is still good, right? Because you can just draw into, like, an Imperm going second or whatever, but how many actual interruptions do we have off of, like, the Maxi here? We have, well, if you want to count triple tactics talents, you can count that, I guess, but for the most part, it's going to be this effect failure, this other effect failure, these three Imperms, Nibiru, and then Ash Blossom Joy Spring. So if you draw into these too late, they won't have a good activation timing, but I guess at least Infinite Impermanence can be used as a board breaker on the next turn. Nibiru, if it can activate, potentially useful. Then we have like Ash Blossom Joy Spring, same issue as Imperm, but it probably won't have any use on the second turn except to stop maybe like a Maxi or something like that. Which, not that likely for your opponent to have it either way, so not really something worth talking about. Effect failure, not as good as Imperm because it can't be used as like board breaker. So, yeah, I mean, if I am able to play around the infinite impermanence, that's not too difficult. So with Imperm, I can just give my opponent a card, and that's something you can do in certain combos. So if we're able to do so early enough, we're only staring down Ash Blossom, 2 effect failure, and 1 Nibiru, and then the odds of opening like both effect failure through maybe, let's say I only special summon maybe like 10 times. Do I care about like any of these cards? None of your cards really do anything. Honestly, like if you have, for example, free Ryzeal from Star over here to Sword Ryzeal, if I have like, let's say Cosmic Blazer, like just 2 Cosmic Blazer, I can negate the summon on Duo Drive and then negate a Detonator summon. And I don't think you can put any more rank 4s on the field. So with 2 interruptions, essentially I would still completely toast your board. So it doesn't really matter if you're able to extend, but or you have multiple like starter extenders and you can go into all of them, it wouldn't really matter, I don't think. So yeah, that's kind of cracked, I guess, if I was able to do something like that anyways, just for example, right? Is there really big chokes specifically related to the extra deck for both of these decks? So for example, if you want to try to go into Whitebinder here, if I negate a summon, I think that's probably the heftiest thing I could do. That would cook. I think Solemn Judgment is actually pretty decent for this. But I mean, I just wouldn't want to play Solemn because it's like terrible for going second, and I don't want to like kind of brick on this either. But yeah, if you were able to use a Solemn like effect, that would work as well. Just negate summon type stuff. That would be absolutely cooking both of these decks. So this guy, whoever built this list, was cooking just a little bit. I wouldn't say that much, but that was like an aspect of these decks that I want to point out. Another weakness is that if you look here, there's not a single like main decked piece of back row removal. So these decks, both of them, are very weak against stun, which is just kind of like eh. And also like just floodgates in general, especially the back row variety of floodgates, you don't really have any answers to them. So you know, someone drops rivalry, Tikaboo, goes in, whatever, you're not able to remove it. In Maliss's case, you're mostly playing Dark Cybers, so you're like kind of okay, which is a thing, but yeah. There a lot of just combo heavy stuff going on here, but if we were to look back at, for example, let's see, a few older decks, they would benefit, in my opinion, a lot more from having like more engine pieces, right? So Sword Soul combo, you would have like Ecclesia, you could special summon Ecclesia to then go into like Taya, I think. Yeah, you could go into Taya. Or you could go into Moyi, or you could normal summon Moyi, or normal summon Taya afterwards. And then that's like a thing you wouldn't have access to if you only had one, or just like the minimum amount of starters, I guess, if that makes sense, right? If I have Sword Soul Emergence, I could also search like Protos, and then Protos declaring whatever attribute is on my opponent's field to remove like potentially Interruption, or trade for Interruption, potentially remove a body because Protos is like a decently sized fellow. We also have like Long One, which is another kind of extender. We have like all of the Tenyi cards, which are able to also be used as going second kind of what's the word I'm looking for? They're kind of like tools you can use to assist you with going second, like with Vishuda able to force some interruptions, interactions, whatever. And also like the Tenyis are just moderately sized. They could be used to run over things. You have options for going second like Bakshia and the level 7 Yangzing. I'm not remembering the name of right now. I believe that guy was useful for something as well. I think that was also for going second, right? So if we have engine pieces like for Sword Soul, like the individual engine pieces, you might argue, are going to be like maybe worse than this. But if we're going second and we have multiple of our engine pieces here, in my opinion, it's going to be better because you're able to do more and you don't have as many chokes and it'll feel more overwhelming, in my opinion. So yeah, I found that a little bit interesting. And there are other decks like this as well. Older decks like Sprite, for example, able to go into like threatening Zeus and then being able to potentially go into a play later, like some different play. And you can also like insulate your plays with potentially Sprite Red, Carrot to force your opponent to trade with them. You have the ability to grab Sprite Smashers for going second. With your Jet, you have a lot of these options. And then there's like, but what else? Let's see. I guess, yeah. Vanquish Soul with all of their engine pieces is pretty cracked as well, honestly. You have Dr. Madlove, which is able to return a monster with the lowest defense on field to the hand, your choice of Tide. This can remove a decent amount of monsters. This is RNG, kinda, sort of ish, depending on like what stat line we're actually playing against. But this is technically removal. Then we have Ryzeal, which actually is removal as well. Then we have Caesar Valius, which is also removal. And you can also peg out all of your guys to kind of protect them from targeted removal and also just targeted negation, like Imperm, for example, targeted effects in general. If there were non-targeting like removal, then you're kind of cooked. So that's not great. But aside from that, you're pretty chillin', and also your guys are fairly big, so you could probably run over some things. So there's that, and technically you actually have Dust Devil, which is able to be used as a going second card if you just have, I guess, like a large swath of cards, just a significant amount of Vanquish Soul Engine. It will kind of matter, right? Because Vanquish Soul can technically go into all of their cards off of a Ryzeal, but that takes multiple turns. So this gets you to essentially like full power Vanquish Soul, like I guess immediately, if that makes sense. So we would immediately be able to drop every single tool in our arsenal. We don't really get there that fast. Normally it takes actually like our opponent's turn and then our own turn before we can fully like unlock the Vanquish Soul, I guess, and kind of like use all of our tools, I guess. But there's also the aspect of, I suppose, like the spells and traps not being able to be recycled right now. I don't know if they will be later, but yeah, it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, opening multiple engine pieces, that that can make or break a deck sometimes. And it's interesting how with these one card combo decks now, that sure, you might be able to access all of your engine pieces, but that also means because you can access all of your engine pieces, your uh, engine pieces collectively are not as good as maybe some other decks, because your engine pieces are just accessing your other engine pieces to go into the extra deck. So that means if we cut off the extra deck, we just brutalize your main deck cards that aren't so good. There's a lot of different ways we could kind of just win, I guess. So for example, let's say you special summon X, you summon Sword Ryzeal. So from this point, I can then just decide, all right, I'm gonna just snap your deck at this point, and by snap I mean we're going to just drop a board wipe. And then if you were to special summon Ice, Ice special summons another monster. Then I'll snap you again and destroy all of your monsters. And then yeah, that's your engine completely cooked. With a Vanquish Soul, you actually have protection effect on Ryzeal. You have removal on Ryzeal, able to technically remove this board wipe I'm talking about. And if you're wondering what card I am referring to, it is specifically this one, Prank Kid's Battle Butler. Yeah, with the effect of you contribute this card, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Combine that with Meow Meow Mew, and then yeah, this would be 2 board wipes. So yeah, you drop any kind of like board where I feel like you might potentially make some annoying extra deck monster. I'll just completely stop that with Battle Butler. And you know, you can technically do this twice, I guess, right? So no matter what engine pieces you open, well, if you open non-engine, it's a different story, right? But regardless of what engine pieces you open, I think there's no way you're beating Battle Butler, except for like, I guess if you specifically are able to do like next effect, send a Myriologic Aggregator. But the thing about specifically Battle Butler is I don't have to have this on the field immediately, so Myriologic Aggregator doesn't actually work. Is you can fusion summon into this guy on your opponent's turn, so that doesn't really work here. So yeah, that's not really doing a lot. And with Maliss as well, we can kind of cook them in the same way, where we're just wiping their weak monsters, like their main deck monsters, off the field, and they're not able to do anything. So I mean, I just found all of this a little bit interesting. Thought I'd share with the class here. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.